One of Fauci's biggest critics is Senator Rand Paul, who blamed the former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases for covering up where COVID-19 came from. Here he is with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday Morning Futures on Fox News. Let's watch that.
The blame equally should go not only to Chinese authorities, but to Anthony Fauci and all those who advocated for this. But there has to be a reassessment. Look, Bill Gates has been over there recently. Bill Gates is the largest funder of trying to find these viruses in remote caves and bring them to big cities. So what happened in China is they went 8 to 10 hours south of Wuhan, 200 to 300 feet deep into a cave, found viruses and took them back to a city of 15 million. There are many, many scientists who think that Bill Gates is wrong in funding this, that our government's wrong, that the Chinese government, that really we don't need to be searching for viruses that may never interact with man.
Paul made Fauci a frequent target for his handling of the pandemic, and last week, his criticism seemed to be affirmed after journalists Matt Taibbi, Michael Schellenberger, and Alex Gutentag published a Substack report that claimed the first people to contract COVID-19 were scientists from the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
So we've been discussing this subject a lot this morning, in part because the administration has seemingly blown right past the deadline to release whatever information they have that was leading departments to make conclusions about where COVID comes from. I'm really interested to see that, to see if those 3 scientists who, according to Taibbi and Schellenberger, were the first to get sick, if that's in the intelligence we have. And, you know, as Rand Paul is pointing out there, again, it's just, I know I've brought this up a million times, but the theory of the lab origin, again, extends potentially to U.S. blame, to Bill Gates and WHO. It spreads the blame. It spreads the blame and includes Western people in the blame. So the idea that if you wanted to pin it on China, Chinese people in a racist way, you cling to, again, we should follow the truth wherever it leads, but you'd prefer to cling to the initial theory that, like, the cultural eating practices of Chinese people are what caused the pandemic. So I just find that, again, so a point worth making every time it comes up.
Yeah. The other part of this that is so odd is that it seems undeniable at this point. It's been reported on widely that the safety protocols at the lab were deeply lacking, that there are tiers of protocols depending on the seriousness of the virus, the danger of the virus that's being studied, and that there was a real mismatch here between what the safety protocols were and what they were actually doing. So there is, of course, a whole other conversation about whether or not there should ever be gain-of-function research, right, whether the practice, as Rand Paul is saying there, of bringing viruses that humans are unlikely to have contact with from caves into cities with millions of people. That's one part of it. Another part of it is that even if you think that stuff should be done, do you think it should be done under certain safety protocols that prevent there from being potential spillovers like the ones that we may have now just suffered through for the last 3 years? And when you have State Department cables warning of safety issues at Wuhan, when there are obviously a lot of people in the know who had reason to believe that there was a problem here, and yet absolutely no substantive curiosity about what they knew and whether or not you should hold them accountable. And not only is a problem for those who deserve accountability, it's also a problem for those who want to make sure that these kinds of behaviors aren't continued on into the future in a way that makes us susceptible to another outbreak down the road. So again, the lack of curiosity, the framing of this in political terms, it is frustrating and it is odd. And we just recorded a segment on a New York Times story on Russia, claiming that there's evidence that Russia blew up the Ukrainian dam that had charts and graphs and figures. And I can't recall ever seeing that level of scrutiny explaining what the lab tech protocols were and what the safety guidelines should be and the funding diagrams of what went into Wuhan and who knew what when. And that is exactly why we still have people who are so frustrated and so skeptical and who have turned this story, which is one of broad public importance, into one that now has this political valence.
Absolutely. The New York Times can confirm that the U.S. government has a heat signature detecting satellite that knows at what second the dam breach occurred. But they're not working their sources to confirm that Ben Hugh, the Batwoman's deputy, was the first person to have COVID-19. Please work on that. I like do it, confirm it.
Also,
I want to know, or debunk
guy?
it. Or if it's not true, if somebody gave bad information and you can confirm that he didn't get sick, like, you know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
I just want to know the truth. I just want the truth.
Can we interview these 3 people? I've looked. I haven't seen any evidence of any interest in talking to them. When I believe Schellenberger was on the show last week, I asked him about any.
He said he tried to get in contact, but they didn't get any response.
Exactly. And there are people, all due respect to Michael Schellenberger, who have infinitely more resources and the power of media organizations.
I'm sure he would agree. Yeah.
New York Times behind them. And again, there's no there, or at least report on your efforts to try to do so and let us know what the responses were. Where are these people? Are they
right? Is it just because they're listening to the New York Times ran at first? There was subsequently a much better reporting, but initially with the genetic material indicating the raccoon dogs, and they were like, case closed.
Right.
And then that turned out to be wrong. So maybe they're just, again, this is my suspicion of experts, and it's not coming from a crazy place. A lot of experts know a lot and are right about a lot of things. But a big contingent of the experts, not all of them, there are many expert people who have dissented from the wet market theory since the beginning, but a contingent of experts who were so bought into the importance of this research and were defensive about it, and Fauci-type people saying, sorry, I see why you're concerned, but this could have never created COVID, so don't worry. It could have never created COVID.
Maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, but this idea, I think that expertise is valuable. I'm not an anti-credentialist or anti-science person, or I don't think that there is value in doing study and research and getting professionalized expertise. But as an attorney, the whole point of why you're ever getting to a stage of litigation is that experts disagree.
Right.
A bunch of lawyers looked at a bunch of stuff and said, okay, let's go ahead and take this to trial because both sides think that they have a chance of winning. And it's a lot of money gets spent, right? So you don't go to trial unless you absolutely feel like it's worth it for you. You really think you have a chance. And if you get to that point, that means there's a real justiciable question. Like it's a real up in the air issue. And the idea that you can just default to, oh, this person's a lawyer. Or this person, both sides are going to have experts. Both sides have psychological experts. If it's like a murder trial or what have you, both sides are going to have medical experts. It's a malpractice trial. There's an expert for everything. And it is not diminishing expertise to acknowledge that there can be legitimate differences of opinion on some things. Yes, there's some settled science. Yes, the earth is round. I'm not trying to just asking questions.
So say you. Wake up, sheeple. Come for Briahna.
I don't know. Like you got to just do a little bit more than defer to expertise, and that includes in the situation of uncovering the origins of COVID.
Well, I was going to mention another great article by Ryan Grimm, former co-host at The Intercept, talking about White Coat Waste Project, which is this transparency group that got some documents showing that Ben Hugh, the Batwoman deputy, who is alleged to be the first person to get sick, had gotten was the person on the name of the document for U.S.-funded gain-of-function research to the tune of $41 million, doled out by National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which was overseen by Fauci. We're actually going to have someone from that organization on the show, I believe, tomorrow, so you won't want to miss that, and we'll have more Rising right after this.